A bobcat kitten had the saddest eyes, but one meeting changed everything. When a wildlife rescuer finds the tiny creature caught in a cruel trap, she believes she's saving a life. But she has no idea this kitten is the key to a dangerous secret bigger than she could ever imagine. Suddenly, the fight to heal one fragile animal turns into a battle against powerful forces determined to silence her. As threats close in and shocking truths come to light, the rescuer must risk everything: her safety, her family, even her own life, to protect the helpless. But with danger lurking at every turn, one question remains: will saving this kitten expose the truth or cost her everything she loves? Before we start, take a moment to comment your name or city. It's my way of remembering that. Behind each play is a real heartbeat. The pre-dawn silence shattered with a cry that made Maris Calder's heart skip a beat. She stood frozen beside her old pickup truck, keys dangling from her fingers as she listened. Intently, sound came again, faint but unmistakable, a desperate whimper carrying across the misty morning air. Maris checked her watch, 4:30 in the morning. She was usually heading to start her school bus route at this hour, but that cry tugged at her instincts as a wildlife rehabilitator. Following the sound, she found herself crossing onto the quarry property, past a weathered, no trespassing sign. The eastern sky was just beginning to lighten as Maris picked her way carefully through the scrubby vegetation. Her boots crunched on loose gravel, and she kept her flashlight beam low to the ground. The whimpering grew louder, leading her to a small clearing. What she found there made her blood run cold. A young bobcat kitten lay trapped in the cruel metal jaws of an illegal steel trap. The sight of the animal's suffering hit Maris like a physical blow. Kitten's leg was caught in the ruthless grip of the trap, and one eye was clouded over with injury. Despite its predicament, the little creature still had fight in it, trying weakly to pull away as Maris approached. "Easy there, little one," Maris murmured, keeping her voice soft and steady despite the anger burning in her chest. These brutal traps had been outlawed for good reason. "I'm going to help you." With practiced movements, Maris pulled on her thick work gloves and retrieved the catch pole from her truck. Years of experience handling injured wildlife guided her actions as she carefully secured the kitten. The animal was young, probably only a few months old, and clearly exhausted from struggling. The trap's mechanism was stiff with rust, but Maris managed to force it open. The kitten's leg was badly damaged, but not completely crushed. "You're lucky I found you when I did," she told the trembling creature as she gently lifted it into a transport carrier. "Let's get you fixed up." Her modest rehabilitation clinic was attached to her small house on the outskirts of town. The morning light was growing stronger as Maris carried the carrier inside, her mind already running through the treatment the kitten would need. The clinic wasn't fancy, just a converted garage with basic medical supplies and recovery cages, but it had helped countless injured animals over the years, working quickly but carefully. Maris cleaned the leg wound and administered pain medication. The clouded eye would need a specialist's attention, but for now, stopping any infection was the priority. The kitten, which she found herself calling Sable because of its dark coat, remained surprisingly calm during treatment. "You're a brave one," Maris told Sable as she finished bandaging the leg. She had just settled the kitten into a recovery cage with water and soft blankets when she heard vehicles pulling up outside. Sheriff Dan Thompson's cruiser was parked next to a gleaming black SUV that Maris recognized immediately, Keaton Voss's vehicle. Her jaw tightened as she stepped outside to meet them. "Morning, Maris," the sheriff said, but his usual friendly tone was strained. "Mr. Voss here tells me you've got a nuisance predator in your possession." Keaton Voss emerged from his SUV, his imposing frame and steel-gray hair catching the morning light. His expensive clothes looked out of place against the humble backdrop of Maris's clinic. "That animal needs to be destroyed," he stated flatly. "It's a threat to livestock and public safety." Maris stood straighter, her voice firm. "That threat is a injured baby bobcat that was caught in an illegal trap on your property, Mr. Voss. Would you like to explain that?" Voss's face darkened. "You were trespassing. And those traps are necessary pest control measures." "They're illegal," Maris countered. and I have a valid rehabilitation permit. That kitten is now legally under my care until it can be released." Sheriff shifted uncomfortably. "Maris, you know the policy on predator species? We can't risk show me the law that says I have to surrender a legally protected species to be destroyed," Maris interrupted. "I've rehabilitated predators before. This kitten will recover and be released far from any residential areas." "Miss Calder?" Voss's voice had taken on a dangerous edge. "You're making a mistake. That animal is staying right here," Maris finished. "Firmly, unless you have a court order saying otherwise, Sheriff Thompson." The sheriff exhaled heavily. "No, I don't. But Maris, you might want to think carefully about this. There are considerations." "The only thing I'm considering is that—" "Kitten's recovery," Maris replied. She could feel the weight of Voss's glare, sense the unspoken threat in his rigid posture. "This isn't over," Voss said quietly as he turned to leave. "You have no idea what you're involving yourself in." The sheriff lingered after Voss drove away. "Maris, I'm warning you as a friend. Keaton Voss isn't someone you want as an enemy. He's got influence with the county board, connections with— I don't care who he knows." Maris cut in. "What he's doing is wrong, Dan. Those traps are cruel and illegal. If he's trying to clear predators off that land, there's a reason, and it's not about public safety. Just watch your back," the sheriff advised, before returning to his cruiser. Maris waited until both vehicles had disappeared. Down the dusty road before going back inside, Sable was resting quietly in the recovery cage, the little chest rising and falling steadily. Looking at the injured kitten, Maris knew she had just stepped into something much bigger than a simple wildlife rescue. She had crossed a line, challenged someone used to getting his way, someone with power and influence. But watching Sable's peaceful sleep, Maris felt a quiet certainty settle over her. Whatever came next, she had made the right choice. Some lines. Once crossed, couldn't be uncrossed and shouldn't be. She straightened her supplies and checked Sable's bandages one more time. She would be late starting her bus route today, but her supervisor would understand. Right now, this was where she needed to be. The morning sun streamed through the clinic windows, warming the room as Maris pulled up a chair next to Sable's. Cajun settled in to monitor her patient. The morning sun had barely crept over the horizon when a heavy knock rattled the clinic's front door. Maris looked up from where she was changing Sable's bandages to see Troy Bunker's bulky silhouette through the frosted glass. Her hands trembled slightly as she secured the final wrap around the kitten's injured leg. "Coming," she called out, gently placing Sable back in the recovery cage. The tiny bobcat let out a soft mew, its one good eye watching her movements. Troy's weathered face held no warmth as she opened the door. He filled the entire doorframe, work boots caked with quarry dust, a perpetual scowl etched into his features. "Miss Calder, Mr. Voss wants his property." "There's no property of Mr. Voss's here," Maris replied, keeping her voice steady despite her racing heart. "Just injured wildlife under legal rehabilitation. That cat's been causing trouble on his land. We both know it needs to be dealt with." Troy took a step forward, his steel-toed boot crossing the threshold. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be." "Are you threatening me, Mr. Bunker?" Maris stood her ground, though she felt small in his looming presence. "Friendly message. Shame if anything happened to your little setup here." His eyes swept across the modest clinic. "Or if your brother lost his job over this misunderstanding." As if on cue, her cell phone buzzed. A text from Silas. "Need to talk. Coming by." 20 minutes after Troy left, Silas's familiar truck pulled up outside. Her younger brother's usual easy smile was nowhere to be seen as he walked in, still wearing his Voss mining uniform. "Maris, you've got to give them the cat," he said without preamble. "Voss is on the warpath. I could lose everything in the house. The truck payments, Emily's college fund. Sit down, see Maris," said softly, guiding him to a chair. "Come meet her first." I named her Sable. She led him to the recovery area where the small Bobcat Kitten was curled up, its dark coat gleaming in the morning light. "Look at her, Silas. Really look. She was caught in an illegal trap, probably meant to clear predators off Voss's land. Her eye," Maris's voice caught. "She deserves a chance." Silas's expression softened as he watched the kitten. "She is beautiful. But Maris, this is bigger than one cat. I know. I can't back down. Not on this. Later that afternoon, Maris's phone exploded with notifications. A video was spreading across local social media showing bloody goat carcasses in a pen at dusk, with glimpses of what appeared to be a bobcat. The footage was grainy, shot in low light, but the carnage was clear enough to spark outrage. Vicious. "Predator attack!" the caption screamed. "When will authorities act to protect our livestock?" Maris watched the video several times, her frown deepening. Something felt off about the timing, the convenient camera placement, the way the wounds looked. But the damage was already done. Comments flooded in demanding action, calling for elimination of all predators in the area. Within hours, her worst fears were confirmed. The county commissioners announced an emergency meeting for the following evening to discuss implementing a predator purge across the entire ridge. If approved, it would mean open season on all wildcats, including any rehabilitated animals, released back into the area. Sitting beside Sable's cage, Maris watched the kitten bat playfully at a dangling toy, showing signs of growing stronger each day. The thought of all the progress being undone, Sable and countless other wildcats being condemned based on what she suspected was staged footage, made her stomach churn. But as she looked at the brave little fighter before her, determination replaced fear. She couldn't hide from this. The truth needed to come out about the illegal traps, about Voss's methods, about the vital role predators played in maintaining the ridge's ecosystem. If they wanted a public battle, she would give them one. Maris pulled out her laptop and began documenting everything: photos of Sable's injuries, her rehabilitation progress, research on local bobcat populations and behavior patterns. She reached out to wildlife experts and environmental lawyers she knew from her years of rehabilitation work. The commissioners' meeting wouldn't just be about fear and viral videos. She would make sure of that. Her phone buzzed again. Silas. "Be careful, sis," his message read. "Voss plays dirty." "I know," she typed back. "But some things are worth fighting for." Looking at Sable's peaceful form, Maris felt the weight of what was coming. Kitten to something much larger. A fight for truth, for the wild spaces and creatures that called the ridge home, for standing up to those who would destroy them for profit. She wasn't sure she was ready, but she knew she had to try. The morning after the viral video appeared, Maris knew she needed expert help. She dialed a number she hadn't used in months, hoping the connection would still be strong. "Hollis?" Maris called her. "I need your expertise on something urgent." The biologist's steady voice brought immediate relief. "I saw the video. Something's not right about it. My thoughts exactly. Could you come look at some evidence?" 2 hours later, Hollis Greer's mud-splattered field truck pulled up to the clinic. The tall biologist stepped out, already dressed for field work in sturdy boots and cargo pants, equipment vest loaded with gear. Though locals often dismissed Hollis's decades of predator research, his reputation in scientific circles remained. "Sterling. Show me what you've got," he said. Following Maris inside, she laid out her findings. Photos of Sable's injuries, the trap location, timestamps that didn't add up. Hollis studied everything methodically, making notes. This wasn't random, he concluded. The trap placement, the timing, someone's coordinating this. He looked up. "We need to survey the ridge." They spent the next several hours hiking the quarry boundaries, moving carefully to avoid detection. Hollis's trained eyes spotted what others might miss: disturbed ground, broken branches, subtle signs of human activity.
Ow.
There he pointed, indicating a glint of metal partially hidden by leaves. Another steel jaw trap, this one freshly baited. They found 3 more within 100 yards, but it was what Hollis spotted next that changed everything. Mounted on a tree trunk, cleverly disguised with bark-colored paint, sat a trail camera. "Professional grade," he murmured, examining it without touching. "Motion activated, night vision capable." His eyes narrowed. "This is a coordinated operation." They documented each discovery, marking locations on Hollis's GPS. By late afternoon, they'd found 11 traps and 7 cameras, all positioned to create an interlocking surveillance web around the quarry's perimeter. "They're not just targeting predators," Hollis explained as they reviewed their findings. "They're gathering intelligence, tracking movement patterns. This is about control. Rain began to fall as they sheltered under a rocky overhang. Thunder rumbled in the distance as Hollis pointed to their map. The key camera is here, by the spillway. Based on its position, it would have captured everything, including whoever's setting these traps. He tapped the spot. If we can get that... Memory card. It's heavily patrolled, Maris warned. During good weather, yes. But with a storm coming, Hollis glanced at the darkening sky. We might have our chance. They spent the next hour planning, calculating patrol patterns and camera angles. The storm would provide cover, but timing would be crucial. Maris's phone buzzed Silas again. She stepped away to take the call. You need to stop this, her brother pleaded. Voss knows what you're doing up there. He's not playing around, Maris. He'll destroy you. I can't back down, see? Not now. We've found evidence. Evidence won't matter if you're... He paused. Just be careful. Voss doesn't fight fair. Never has. After hanging up, Maris rejoined Hollis. The rain was falling harder now, thunder closer. My brother thinks we're crazy. She said, maybe we are. Hollis checked his equipment one last time. But sometimes crazy is what it takes to expose the truth. They waited until dusk, when the storm was at its peak. Lightning split the sky as they made their way toward the spillway, using the weather and growing darkness as cover. The memory card held proof. They both felt it. Despite the risks, despite Silas's warnings about Voss's tactics, they had to try. The quarry loomed ahead, its edges harsh against the stormy sky. Somewhere in the darkness, a camera held the truth they needed. They just had to reach it. The storm clouds gathered ominously over the quarry as Maris and Hollis made their way toward the spillway. Thunder rumbled in the distance, and fat raindrops began to fall, creating slick conditions on the already treacherous terrain. Maris adjusted the straps of the tracking crate secured to her back, where they'd store any evidence they found. We need to hurry, Hollis whispered, her eyes scanning the area. The storm's picking up fast. They moved carefully across the wet shale, their boots sliding slightly with each step. The spillway loomed ahead, a concrete monster with rushing water cascading down its face. The rain was coming down harder now, making visibility poor. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the gloom. Troy Bunker stood blocking their path, his massive frame casting a menacing shadow even in the dim light. Well, he sneered, taking a step forward. What do we have here? Maris's heart hammered in her chest. She felt Hollis tense beside her. This is private property, Bunker continued, his voice barely audible over the intensifying storm. You're trespassing. We have every right to document illegal activity, Hollis shot back, but her voice wavered slightly. Lightning flashed, illuminating Bunker's face. His expression was murderous. He lunged forward suddenly, causing both women to stumble backward. Maris's foot hit a slick patch of shale, and she felt herself losing balance. The weight of the tracking crate threw her off further, and before she could catch herself, she was sliding toward the churning runoff below. Maris! Hollis screamed. Time seemed to slow as Maris slid downward, the rough shale tearing at her clothes. Her fingers scrambled for purchase on the wet rock. By some miracle, she managed to grab her climbing rope from her belt and loop it. Around a jutting rock formation, the rope pulled taut, stopping her descent just yards from the violent water below. Her arms burned as she tried to maintain her grip. Above, she could hear Hollis struggling with Bunker. Hold on, Hollis called out. Maris began to pull herself up slowly, her muscles straining with every movement. The tracking crate felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds now. She couldn't risk letting it go. It might contain the evidence they needed. She was halfway up when she saw Bunker break away from Hollis and move toward her rope. His intent was clear in his eyes. Don't, Hollis screamed, but Bunker already had his knife out. The rope frayed under his blade. Maris watched in horror as the strands began to separate. There was no mistaking this for an accident. Bunker was trying to kill her. With a surge of desperate strength, Maris lunged upward just as the rope gave way. Her fingers found a ridge in the rock face, and she clung to it as the severed rope whipped past her into the churning water below. Hollis appeared at the edge. Above her, reaching down, grabbed my hand. Behind her, Bunker advanced again, but Hollis kicked out, catching him in the knee. He stumbled, giving them the precious seconds they needed. Maris grasped Hollis's hand and scrambled up onto safer ground. "Run," Hollis yelled. They fled through the storm, their feet slipping and sliding on the wet ground. Behind them, they could hear Bunker's angry shouts. But the sound grew fainter as they put distance between them. By the time they reached Maris's truck, they were both soaked to the bone and covered in mud. Maris's hands were bleeding from the rough rock, and her entire body ached from the near fall. "Did you get it?" she gasped as they climbed into the truck. Hollis pulled a single memory card from her pocket, her hands shaking. "Yes," right before Bunker showed up. The drive back too. The clinic was tense and silent. Every shadow seemed to hold a thread, and Maris kept checking the rearview mirror, expecting to see headlights following them. Once inside the clinic, Maris immediately locked all the doors and checked every window. The reality of what had just happened was starting to sink in. Bunker had tried to kill her. This wasn't just about protecting some scheme anymore. They were dealing with people willing to commit murder to keep their secrets. "Are you okay?" Hollis asked, watching as Maris paced the clinic floor. "No," Maris admitted, her voice shaky. "But I will be once we see what's on that card." She paused, looking at her friend. "Hollis, he tried to kill me." "Actually tried to kill me, I know," Hollis said softly. "We need to be extremely careful now. This is bigger than we thought." Maris nodded, wrapping her arms around herself. The familiar walls of her clinic, usually a source of comfort, suddenly felt exposed and vulnerable. She double-checked the locks again, then pulled all the blinds closed. "Let's see what was worth killing for," she said, taking the memory card from Hollis with trembling fingers. Whatever was on this card, she prayed it would be enough to end this nightmare before someone got seriously hurt. Or worse. Her clothes were still dripping, forming puddles on the floor, and her muscles screamed in protest as she moved, but Maris couldn't rest yet. Not until they knew what they'd risked their lives to obtain. The weight of the danger they were in pressed down on her like a physical thing, making every shadow seem threatening, every sound suspicious. Through the clinic windows, lightning continued to flash and thunder rolled across the sky. The storm raged on outside, but it was nothing compared to the storm of fear and determination brewing inside Maris's heart. They had the memory card, now they just had to hope it contained the evidence they needed to protect Sable and expose whatever sinister operation Voss was running. Maris's hands trembled as she clicked through the video. Footage frame by frame on her old desktop computer. The harsh fluorescent lights of her clinic buzzed overhead while Hollis leaned in close. Both of them scrutinizing every detail of the notorious mauling video that had spread like wildfire across their community. "Wait," Maris said suddenly, her finger frozen on the spacebar. "Look at that water trough in the background." Hollis squinted at the screen. "What about it? There's something reflected in the water." Maris leaned closer, her nose almost touching the monitor. In the murky surface of the metal trough, a familiar orange and black striped pattern was visible, a safety decal she'd seen countless times before. "That's the same warning sticker they use on all the fencing inside Voss's quarry pit," she breathed. "This wasn't filmed at some random farm. This was staged right on their property." Hollis straightened up, running a hand through her gray-streaked hair. "Are you absolutely certain? I'd stake my life on it. My brother Silas works there, remember? I've visited enough times to recognize those markings anywhere." Maris's voice grew stronger with conviction. "They made it look like some poor farmer's goats were attacked, but this whole thing was orchestrated." She continued clicking through the frames methodically, her eyes sharp for any other telling details. The footage showed several goats in obvious distress, with what appeared to be blood matting their fur. But something about the whole scene felt artificial now that she knew where to look. Then she saw it. A flash of movement in the shadowy corner of the frame that made her blood run cold. A small, dark shape with one distinctively clouded eye that caught the light just so. "Oh God," Maris whispered, her hand flying to her mouth. "Hollis, that's Sable. They used her as bait." Hollis leaned in again, squinting. "The kitten, are you sure?"
That
Milky eye is unmistakable. Look how they positioned her just at the edge of frame, trying to lure in an adult cat to make their show. Maris's voice shook with rage and horror. They didn't just trap her by accident. They deliberately used an injured baby to draw in other bobcats, probably its own mother, just to stage this whole thing. She pushed back from the desk, pacing the small office as the full implications sank in. This isn't about protecting livestock or controlling problem predators at all. This is calculated manipulation to justify their expansion plans. They want to clear more land for the quarry, and they're manufacturing a crisis to do it. Hollis was quiet for a long moment, processing. We need to be strategic about this, she finally said. The commissioners' meeting is in 3 days. If we go in guns blazing with accusations, Voss's people will just deny everything and paint us as hysterical tree huggers. So what do you suggest? Maris asked, still trembling with barely contained fury. I know a state wildlife inspector, someone I've worked with before on other cases. Just thorough, professional, and most importantly, completely independent. From local politics, Hollis pulled out her phone and started scrolling through contacts. If we can get her to quietly attend the meeting, would she be willing to help? Maris asked, hopefully. Carol takes her job seriously. If we show her what we've found, the staged video, the illegal traps, everything she'll have to investigate. And her authority supersedes the county commission. Maris sank back into her chair, feeling the weight of exhaustion from their dangerous mission to retrieve the memory card. But mixed with the fatigue was a fierce determination. They finally had proof of what Voss was really doing, using an injured baby animal as bait, staging attacks to manipulate public opinion, all to further their own agenda of expansion. Make the call, she said firmly. We have to stop them before they hurt anyone else, human or animal. Hollis nodded and stepped outside to make her phone call. Leaving Maris alone with the damning footage still frozen on her screen, she looked at the tiny shape of Sable in the corner of the frame, remembering how broken and terrified the kitten had been when she first found her in that steel trap. Now she understood that it hadn't been a random accident. It was part of a calculated plan that treated wildlife as disposable props in a manufactured crisis. Her gaze drifted to the recovery room where the real Sable now rested, healing a little. More each day. The contrast between the kitten's growing trust and the cruelty of those who had hurt her made Maris's heart ache. But they finally had concrete evidence to expose the truth. With the help of a state inspector, they could put a stop to this before any more animals suffered. When Hollis returned, her expression was cautiously optimistic. Carol can be here tomorrow morning to review everything we've gathered. She'll attend the commission meeting as an observer first, then decide how to proceed officially. Maris nodded, feeling a glimmer of hope pierce through her exhaustion. Thank you, Hollis. I couldn't have done any of this alone. We're not done yet, Hollis reminded her gently. But at least now we know exactly what we're dealing with. This isn't just about saving one bobcat anymore. It's about stopping systematic abuse of wildlife for corporate gain. And we have proof, Maris said, gesturing to the screen where the reflected safety decal and Sable's distinctive eye still showed clearly in the frozen frame. Real, concrete proof that they staged the whole thing. We do, Hollis agreed. Now we just have to make sure it gets into the right hands. Carol will know how to handle this properly, through official channels, with all the legal authority. Of the state behind her, Maris felt some of the tension leave her shoulders. They weren't just two women against a powerful corporation anymore. Soon they would have an official ally with the power to investigate and intervene. The truth about Voss's manipulation would come to light, and Sable's suffering would help expose and stop a much larger pattern of abuse. The early morning sun filtered through the clinic windows as Hollis spread out a large topographical map across Maris's desk. Coffee cups sat nearby, steam rising as they bent over the detailed terrain markings. Colored pins dotted the surface, each representing a discovered trap location. Look at this pattern, Hollis said, running her finger along a line of red pins. These aren't random placements. They're creating a deliberate kill zone. Maris leaned in closer, frowning at the strategic arrangement of markers. What do you mean? See how the traps funnel into this valley? Hollis traced the natural corridor formed by the ridgeline. And look where it leads. She tapped a spot marked with pencil on the map. This is where Voss filed permits for that luxury lodge. Development. They're trying to clear out all the predators before construction, Maris said, the realization hitting her like a physical blow, making sure no wild animals can possibly interfere with their high-end guests. Exactly. They're using illegal methods to do it. Hollis pulled out her phone and showed Maris a series of photos she'd taken. These are steel jaw traps, banned in this state. But look at the manufacturing marks. She zoomed in on a metal tag. These were made in Mexico. They're importing illegal traps to create their artificial dead zone. The door chimed in both. Women looked up as Carol Stevens, the state wildlife inspector, entered. She was a tall woman with steel-gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. Maris had spent the previous evening coordinating with her by phone, arranging her quiet attendance. At the upcoming county meeting, "Show me what you've found," Carol said without preamble, setting her briefcase on a nearby chair. For the next hour, they walked her through their evidence, the staged attack video, the trap locations, the documentation of illegal equipment. Carol took detailed notes, her expression growing more serious with each revelation. "We need more," she said finally. "What you have is compelling, but we need to document an active pattern." "Show me these trap lines you've mapped." Hollis nodded. "I can take you there now. We've identified 3 main lines that form the kill corridor." "I'll come too," Maris said, already reaching for her jacket. The more witnesses, the better. They took Carol's unmarked state vehicle, avoiding the main roads as they wound their way up into the ridge country. The autumn air was crisp, leaves crunching under their boots as they hiked to the first location. "Here," Hollis said, pointing to a carefully concealed trap beside a game trail. "Notice how it's set to catch anything moving through this natural funnel point." Carol photographed the trap from multiple angles, including close-ups of the identifying marks. She used a GPS device to log the exact coordinates, then carefully bagged the trap as evidence. They moved methodically along the line, documenting each placement. By midday, they had collected 8 illegal traps, dozens of photos, and precise GPS coordinates showing the deliberate pattern of the kill corridor. "This is exactly what we needed," Carol said, as they loaded the last of the evidence into her vehicle. A clear demonstration of systematic illegal trapping aligned with their development plans. The commissioners won't be able to ignore this. Back at the clinic, they spent hours organizing their documentation. Hollis created detailed maps showing the relationship between trap placements and proposed development areas. Maris prepared a timeline of events, from finding Sable to discovering the staged video. Carol added her official observations and evidence logs. "Remember," Carol cautioned as they finished, "I'll be attending the meeting as an observer initially. Let the commissioners begin their discussion of the predator problem before we present our evidence. The impact will be stronger if we can first demonstrate how they've been manipulated." Maris nodded, feeling both nervous and determined. "What if Voss's people try to discredit us?" "That's why we've built such a thorough case," Hollis replied. "Multiple layers of evidence, official documentation, expert testimony. This isn't just about one injured bobcat anymore. We can prove systematic illegal activity designed to manipulate public policy." They spent the rest of the afternoon refining their presentation, making sure every claim was backed by solid evidence. The maps clearly showed the relationship between trap placements and development plans. Photos documented illegal equipment. GPS coordinates proved the pattern. The video analysis exposed the staged attack. As evening approached, Maris felt a cautious optimism growing. Their case was strong, built on verifiable facts rather than emotional appeals. With Carol's official presence lending weight to their evidence, they had a real chance of exposing the truth before the county could be manipulated into approving a predator purge. "We're ready," Hollis said, gathering up their materials. "Whatever happens at that meeting, we've done everything we can to build a solid case." Maris looked through the window to where Sable was sleeping peacefully in her recovery enclosure. The kitten's healing progress was a daily reminder of why this fight mattered. Soon, the truth about how she had really been injured and why would come to light. "Yes," she agreed quietly, "we're ready." The morning fog hadn't lifted when 3 sheriff's vehicles pulled into the gravel lot of Maris's wildlife rehabilitation clinic. Their red and blue lights cut through the mist like warning signs. Maris watched from her office window, her heart sinking as Deputy Chen stepped out, holding an official-looking envelope. Behind him, she spotted her brother Silas climbing out of his truck, his face tight with worry. The sharp knock at the door made her jump. Inside the recovery room, Sable stirred in his cage, his one good eye tracking the movement. Maris's hands trembled as she opened the door. "Miss Calder, Deputy," Chen said, his voice professionally neutral. "I have a notice of immediate suspension of your wildlife rehabilitation permit, effective as of 8 a.m. this morning." Reese took the envelope with numb fingers. "On what grounds?" "Technical violation of Section 4.3 of the county. Ordinance failure to maintain proper distance between rehabilitation facilities and livestock operations." He gestured toward the Miller farm half a mile down the road. "The minimum required distance is 1 mile. Your clinic is 0.3 miles from their property line." The blood drained from Maris's face. She'd operated here for 5 years without issue. It's never been enforced before. Commissioner's office received a formal complaint. Deputy Chen shifted uncomfortably. "We're here to transfer all current rehabilitation cases to the county facility." Behind him, Bunker emerged from another vehicle, a cruel smile playing at the corners of his mouth. Maris knew exactly where the complaint had originated. "I have 8 animals in recovery right now," she protested. 3 of them are days away from release. "I'm sorry, ma'am. We have transport cages ready." Deputy Chen nodded to his colleagues, who began unloading equipment. Silas stepped forward, pain evident in his eyes. "Maris, please. Don't make this harder than it needs to be." She wanted to scream at him, at all of them, but the weight of official authority pressed down on her shoulders. With shaking hands, she began helping them prep her patients for transport: the injured hawk, the orphaned raccoons, the young deer with the healing leg. But when they reached Sable's enclosure, her resolve nearly broke. The small Bobcat Kitten, pressed against the back of the cage, his clouded eye reflecting the fear she felt in her own heart. "This one's special priority," Bunker announced, producing his own transport carrier. "I'll handle it personally." "Like hell you will," Maris snapped, stepping between him and the cage. Deputy Chen intervened. "Mr. Bunker is authorized by the county facility. Please step aside, Miss Calder." Tears burned in her eyes as she watched them transfer Sable to Bunker's carrier. The kitten's soft mewl of distress felt like a knife in her chest. One by one, the vehicles pulled away, leaving her clinic empty and eerily quiet. Silas lingered, conflict written across his features. "I have to go with them," he said softly. "It's my job." "Your job," Maris spat. "That's all that matters, right?" He reached for her shoulder, but she pulled away. Without another word, he climbed into his truck and joined the convoy as they drove. Silas noticed they weren't taking the usual route to the county animal facility. Instead, they turned onto the quarry access road, the convoy kicking up dust. As they wound their way deeper into Voss's territory, in the truck ahead, he could see Bunker's transport cage with Sable inside. Something felt wrong, very wrong. At a stop sign, Bunker got out to check the cargo straps. As he passed Silas's window, he was talking on his phone. "Yeah, heading to the lime pit now. Take care of the evidence, don't worry about it." Silas's blood ran cold. The lime pit, where the quarry disposed of waste material. The alkaline powder could dissolve organic matter completely, leaving no trace behind. This wasn't a transfer. It was an execution. His hands tightened on the steering wheel as his conscience warred with self-preservation. He thought of Maris, of her dedication to every injured creature that came through her doors. He thought of Sable, fighting to survive. Despite everything stacked against him, with trembling fingers, he pulled out his phone and typed a quick message to his sister. "They're taking him to the lime pit. Access Road B, 20 minutes. This is wrong. I'm sorry. I'm sorry." He hit send, then deleted the message from his phone. Ahead, the convoy continued its grim journey, but something had shifted inside Silas. Some lines, once crossed, changed everything. The quarry loomed ahead, its gray walls a testament to Voss's power in the county, but power, Silas realized, didn't make something right. And sometimes the hardest choice was the only choice you could live with. He watched the transport cage bounce along in the vehicle ahead, hoping his warning would reach Maris in time. The gravel crunched under his tires as they drove deeper into the quarry, each turn bringing them closer to a decision point from which there would be no return. The morning fog still hadn't lifted, but for Silas, everything had suddenly become very clear. The rain made the quarry roads treacherous as Maris gripped her steering wheel, her knuckles white with determination. Hollis sat beside her, scanning the winding path ahead through the fog. They had to time this perfectly. Through the misty windshield, they spotted the convoy of vehicles ahead. Maris's heart pounded as she recognized Bunker's truck carrying the precious cargo. Sable, there. Hollis pointed to a narrow section where the road curved sharply around an outcropping. That's our best chance. Maris gunned the engine, her tires fighting for grip on the slick surface. She pulled alongside Bunker's vehicle just as they approached the lime pit area. The acrid smell of chemicals burned her nostrils even through the closed windows. Bunker swerved toward them, trying to force them off the road. Metal scraped against metal as the vehicles connected. Maris held steady, matching his speed until they reached the pit's edge. She slammed on her brakes, cutting off Bunker's path. The truck skidded to a halt, spraying gravel. Through the rain, she could see Silas's vehicle pulling up behind them. Bunker burst from his cab, rage contorting his features. Maris was already running toward the transport cage in his truck bed. The caustic fumes from the lime pit made her eyes water as she reached for the latch. Get away from there. Bunker charged at her, but Hollis intercepted him, buying Maris precious seconds. As Maris worked the cage's lock, Bunker shoved Hollis aside and grabbed Maris from behind. They struggled at the pit's edge, rain making everything slippery. The concrete barrier was low, too low, and suddenly Maris felt herself pushed backward. Her feet lost purchase on the wet surface. For one terrifying moment, she was suspended. Over the churning, chemical-laden water below, her boots scraped desperately against the concrete wall as caustic fumes burned her throat. The lime pit surface bubbled beneath her, promising a horrific fate. Maris. Silas's voice cut through the rain. She heard the impact as he tackled Bunker, sending them both sprawling onto the wet gravel. Hold on, Hollis had grabbed a length of rope from their truck. She quickly threw one end over a protruding rebar post and tossed the other end too. Maris's fingers closed around the rough rope. Her arms screamed with effort as Hollis pulled, gradually dragging her back up over the edge. She collapsed onto the solid ground, gasping for clean air. But there was no time to recover. Staggering to her feet, Maris stumbled back to the transport. Kage, her trembling fingers, finally worked the latch free.
Aus.
She ripped open the door and carefully lifted Sable out, cradling the frightened kitten against her chest. In the distance, sirens began to wail. Bunker lay groaning where Silas had knocked. Him down? We need to go now. Hollis was already back in the truck, engine running. Silas helped Maris into the vehicle, her legs still shaking from her near-death experience. She held Sable securely as they peeled away from the lime pit, leaving Bunker behind in the rain. County building, Maris managed between ragged breaths. We have to get there with all our evidence. While Sable's still in our possession, it's our only chance. Hollis drove with fierce concentration, navigating the treacherous roads while Silas kept watch for pursuit. In the back seat, Maris gently examined Sable, relieved to find the kitten unharmed despite the ordeal. Their clothes were soaked, their bodies bruised, and their nerves frayed. But they had done it. They had saved Sable from certain death. Now, they just had to make it count for Sable. And for every other creature, Wass's scheme put at risk. The windshield wipers beat a steady rhythm as they sped toward town. Carrying their precious cargo and the truth that could no longer be denied, the county building's double doors burst open as Maris, Hollis, and Silas stumbled in from the storm, their clothes dripping puddles onto the tile floor. Sable's carrier was clutched protectively against Maris's chest, her arms still trembling from their ordeal at the lime pit. The emergency meeting room buzzed with tension as heads turned to watch their dramatic entrance. Commissioner Blake paused. Mid-sentence at the podium, Calder. This is a closed session. You need to see this evidence, Maris interrupted, her voice hoarse but firm. She set Sable's carrier carefully on a side table and pulled out her laptop, hands steady despite her rain-soaked appearance. The Bobcat attacks everyone's been talking about, they were staged. Right on Voss's quarry property. Murmurs rippled through the crowded room. Keaton Voss sat in the front row, his expression darkening as Maris connected her computer to the projector. The first image filled the screen, a freeze frame from the viral video showing the supposedly mauled goats. "Look at the water trough in the background," Maris said, zooming in on a reflective surface. "See that safety decal? The orange and white striped pattern?" She switched to a second photo. This is from inside Voss's quarry pit. The exact same decal, the exact same angle. The whispers grew louder. Hollis stepped forward, spreading out. Detailed maps across the conference table. "We've documented every trap location," she explained, pointing to marked coordinates. "They form a deliberate pattern leading straight through the proposed luxury lodge site. This isn't random predator. Control its systematic elimination of wildlife to clear the way for development." Voss stood up, his face flushed. "This is ridiculous. You're trespassing on private property, making wild accusations. There's more." Maris continued, her voice gaining strength. She lifted Sable carefully from the carrier, cradling the small bobcat. "Look at this kitten's right eye, the clouded one. Now watch this section of video again." Footage played, and there in the shadows, a distinctive milky eye caught the light. Gasps echoed through the room as people made the connection. Silas cleared his throat and stepped to the podium. His work boots leaving wet prints on the floor. "I can confirm everything they're saying. I drive trucks for Voss Quarry. 3 weeks ago, Mr. Voss personally ordered us to set up that pen, bring in the goats, and he swallowed hard. And used that injured kitten as bait to draw in larger cats. The whole thing was staged to drum up support for expanding operations." The state wildlife inspector, who had been quietly observing from the back, now moved forward. "Based on the evidence presented and my own investigation, I can confirm multiple active violations of state wildlife protection laws. The placement and registration of these traps, the deliberate baiting, the false reporting, these are serious. Offenses requiring immediate action." He nodded to 2 uniformed officers near the door. The officers started moving toward Voss, who backed away from his seat. His calm facade cracked, revealing raw panic beneath. "This is a setup," he snarled. Fumbling in his pocket, "You can't I have permits," in one fluid motion. He spun and bolted for the exit, shoving past startled attendees. The heavy doors slammed against the walls as he burst out into the storm. Through the windows, they could see him sprinting across the parking lot toward his black SUV. "Stop him," someone shouted, but Voss was already behind the wheel, engine roaring to life. The SUV's tires spun on the flooded pavement as he accelerated. In his haste to escape, he misjudged the turn. Out of the lot, the vehicle fishtailed wildly and plunged nose first into the swollen drainage. Culvert running alongside the road, water immediately began pouring in through the SUV's grille. The current caught the front end, slowly dragging the vehicle deeper. As floodwater hammered against the metal sides with frightening force, the meeting room erupted into chaos. People rushed to the windows, shouting and pointing. The officers radioed for emergency response. But Maris, still holding Sable, caught sight of Voss, frantically trying to force his door open against the rising water. Her heart pounded as she watched the SUV sink lower. Despite everything he'd done, despite nearly killing her hours earlier at the lime pit, she couldn't stand by and watch him drown. The same instinct that had driven her to save Sable that first morning surged through her now, setting the kitten. Safely in its carrier, Maris turned toward the doors. She knew she only had moments to act before the current pulled the vehicle completely under. Through the rain-lashed windows, Maris saw Voss's SUV careen off the parking lot and plunge nose first into the flooded culvert. The vehicle's headlights pierced the murky water as it began to sink, the current pushing against its side with frightening force. "Someone help him," a voice cried from inside the meeting room. Without hesitation, Maris ran out into the storm. The rain pelted her face as she waded into the rising water, which was already up to her thighs. The cold shock of it stole her breath. but she pushed forward, fighting against the current that tried to sweep her feet out from under her. "Maris, wait," Hollis called from behind her. "It's too dangerous." But Maris couldn't wait. Despite everything Voss had done, the staged attacks, the threats, using Sable as bait, she couldn't let him drown. The water was now at her waist as she reached the driver's side door. Through the window, she could see Voss struggling with his seatbelt, panic clear on his face as water filled the cabin. With trembling hands, she yanked on the door handle. It wouldn't budge. The current was too strong, pressing the door shut. Bracing her feet against the submerged ground, she pulled, again with all her might. This time the door creaked open just enough for her to wedge her shoulder in. "Give me your hand," she shouted over the roar of the water. Voss was still fighting with his seatbelt, which appeared to be jammed. The water was rising faster now, nearly reaching his chest. Without thinking, Maris reached into her pocket and pulled out her multi-tool. The same one she'd used to free Sable from the trap all those weeks ago. She leaned in, fighting to keep her balance as the current threatened to sweep her away. The blade sliced through the wet seatbelt webbing, and Voss tumbled forward into her arms. Together, they stumbled through the deepening water toward the bank, where several officers waited to help pull them out. As soon as they reached solid ground, 2 deputies moved to restrain Voss. He didn't resist, still coughing up water and shivering. Nearby, Maris saw Bunker being led away in handcuffs, his face a mask of defeat. Inside the meeting room, everything happened quickly. The commissioners, faced with the evidence of Voss's scheme and witness testimony, voted unanimously to rescind the predator purge policy. The state wildlife inspector was already on the phone, coordinating with enforcement teams to remove the illegal traps from the ridge. Given Mr. Calder's cooperation in exposing this operation, the district attorney announced, addressing Silas, "We're recommending probation instead of jail time." Silas nodded, relief visible on his face as he caught Maris's eye across the room. Commissioner Blake approached Maris with an official-looking document. "Ms. Calder, your rehabilitation permit is hereby reinstated, effective immediately. You did today both exposing this scheme and saving Mr. Voss shows exactly the kind of character we want in our wildlife rehabilitators." Weeks passed, and the ridge slowly returned to its natural rhythm. The illegal traps were gone, the staged videos debunked, and the truth had finally come to light. On a crisp morning, Maris and Hollis drove to a quiet clearing deep in the timber. Sable's carrier secured in the back seat. They chose this spot carefully, far from human activity, with plenty of natural cover and prey. Maris knelt beside the carrier, her heart full as she opened the door. For a moment, Sable hesitated, her clouded eye catching the morning light. Then, with graceful confidence, she trotted out into the underbrush. "She's ready," Hollis said softly, squeezing Maris's hand. They watched as Sable paused at the edge of the clearing, her dark coat blending with the shadows. Despite her injured eye, she moved with strength and purpose, already scanning her new territory. Then, with a flick of her tail, she disappeared into the timber. Maris turned to Hollis, their fingers still intertwined. "I want to build something. Here," she said. "Not just the clinic, but a life. Something real, something that matters." Hollis smiled, understanding in her eyes. "We already have." Later that week, Silas visited the clinic for the first time since everything had happened. He stood awkwardly in the doorway, hands in his pockets, until Maris waved him inside. "I'm sorry," he said simply, "for not believing you sooner, almost letting them." He trailed off, unable to finish. Maris hugged her brother, feeling the tension leave his shoulders. "You made the right choice when it mattered most," she said. As they sat talking over coffee, Maris looked around her small clinic. It wasn't grand or flashy, but it was honest work. Her world had become smaller in some ways, focused on this ridge, these animals, these people she trusted. But it was also steadier, truer, built on something real instead of lies and schemes. Through the window, she could see the ridge, where Sable now roamed free. The morning sun caught the autumn leaves, turning them to gold. This was enough, she thought. This was everything. If this story found you at the right moment, subscribe and stay. close. Tomorrow's may be the reminder you didn't know you needed.